Okay, everybody, good morning. Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Matt. We'll get started now. I'm Matt. I am a developer and developer advocate at JetBrains, and I work on the Unity support in Rider. And today, I'm going to be talking to you about using Rider as your default script editor in Unity. So we'll have a bit of a look at the product, a bit of an introduction, and we'll see how you can use it, how it can work for you, how it can help you work better with your scripting, and hopefully have a better experience while scripting your code. So, first things first, what is Rider? Quick show of hands, anybody already using Rider? Anybody seen it? Nice, that's good, I like that. So Rider is a cross-platform C# editor. So by cross-platform, we mean that it runs on Mac and Windows. It also works on Linux, and it's the same product across all platforms. So there's not different versions or anything. You get the same feature set, you get the same user experience. It's the same thing on all platforms. And we're calling it a C# editor, but we're kind of more used to calling it an IDE, an integrated development environment. And the key word there is integrated. We kind of believe that we want to give you all the tools that you need to be successful at your project in the box, rather than spending time working on your tooling and sort of getting plugins and getting everything set up. Rider has a deep understanding of the Unity API, excuse me, and that helps it with the features that we've got, and I'll show you some of those in a minute. And it's also based on ReSharper and IntelliJ. So if anybody has used ReSharper before, it's a product we've been building. Awesome, good. It's a product we've been building for about 14 years now, so it's a plugin to Visual Studio, provides extra features, better code completion, navigation, inspections, quick fixes, refactorings, all of those kind of things. And that provides the engine for Rider as well. So Rider is built on a very solid foundation. If you're familiar with IntelliJ as well, so if you've used any IntelliJ products such as IntelliJ IDEA for Java, or WebStorm, or PyCharm, or Android Studio, you'll feel very at home with the user interface that Rider has. So what does this give us? What's the point and everything? Well, Rider it'll index your code. It'll build a code model, and it'll understand how your code is being used, and will layer Unity information on the top of that. And that allows us to provide a whole bunch of really cool features, which makes it easier for you then to concentrate less on the actual code itself and more on the project you want to solve. And that's a very sort of key thing. That's one of the big things that we want to be able to do. So with all of our IDEs, we want you to be able to concentrate just on the problem you're trying to solve, rather than the actual typing and the code that you're doing here. But with the Unity support, we want to take it a little bit further. We want to reduce the amount of time you spend switching between Unity and the code editor and the script editor. So there's lots of nice things that Unity does for you, but sometimes you only find out that you've got something wrong at runtime. And so we want to bring those kind of problems away from runtime and have them ready for you at compile time or at edit time, right in the editor itself. And you don't have to take our word for it either. We've had Rider's been out for about a year or so. We've had a fantastic reception from the industry, from Unity users, but also from within Unity itself. So we're getting some great feedback on it, and we're very excited about the response. But that's enough background. Let's have a look at some of the actual features. We understand that switching to a new editor can feel a little bit daunting. We've tried to make it as comfortable as possible with color schemes that you're familiar with key maps that you're familiar with. If you're familiar with other tools such as IntelliJ, you'll feel right at home. But there are going to be a few differences. And so I'm going to teach you two tips, two survival tips for using Rider. And if you learn nothing else from this talk, these two keyboard shortcuts will get you to just about every bit of functionality in the IDE. The first one is a keyboard shortcut, which is Shift, double shift. If you hit that twice, this now allows you to search everywhere. This is our search everywhere functionality, and it allows you to very quickly find things in your code. So you can navigate very quickly to a class, to a type member, such as a property or a field or so on, and also to files as well. And you don't just have to type the word. You can type in initial letters as well. So we'll match the initial letters of the thing you're trying to find. And we'll get to that very, very quickly. And on top of that, it will also search the IDE. So if you're looking for an action, such as refactoring, you can just type refactor, and it'll go off and find it. It'll also search for preferences as well. So Shift, find everything. The second keyboard shortcut, once you're in your code and everything, is Alt-Enter. And this is our doing something keyboard shortcut. Basically, you can do pretty much everything from this keyboard shortcut. So one of the things that Rider will do for you is provide inspections on your code. It'll try and find things which are not quite right, that match best practices, or sorry, that don't match best practices, and try and help you to fix those up. So it can do things like naming conventions, and if your code doesn't match a naming convention, it'll show a little squiggly underline. And if you hit Alt-Enter on that, you can then have the code quickly fixed up automatically. And it's not just inspections that we will fix as well, it's also context actions pretty much everywhere you are. So if you do it on a string literal, for example, Alt-Enter will allow you to convert that into a verbatim string, or an interpolated string, or split the string, and do a whole bunch of things. So Alt-Enter works pretty much everywhere. And also, it's these last items on the menu which are really useful as well. They're pretty much static wherever you are in Rider. And these items are navigation, refactoring, inspecting, and generating code. These are the entry points into pretty much all of the functionality you'll be able to use. So if you use those, that'll give you another context menu with a list of items to choose from and be able to navigate around your code. And again, if you can't remember what it is you're looking for, just do Alt-Enter and start typing. And that will then find the action that you're looking for, such as rename. So, great. 2 tips to survive and how to work with it, but how do you get started? Once you've downloaded once you've downloaded Rider, the very first thing you need to do, the easiest thing to do, is just open an existing solution. Once you've done that, we'll sort everything else out. Rider will put a plugin into your project. Don't check this into source control. Ignore it. We'll keep it up to date. And that's all you need to do. All you need to do now, though, is switch back to Unity itself so it can load the plugin, and the plugin will do all the work then. It will set the default script editor for you. It will hook into a couple of things just to make your experience a whole lot nicer. And the plugin also adds a bunch of functionality, which I'll show you as we go through. Of course, you can do it manually yourself as well. You can go to the external tools page, browse for Rider, and when you double-click a file, then it'll just open up and work as you'd expect. In Unity 2018.3, I think it is, Unity itself will recognize where Rider is installed, and it'll be just in the drop-down there and make that step even easier. All right, enough images. OK, so this is Rider. This is our IDE, and it looks very much like an IDE. It feels like that. We've got a project view on one side, and we've got then space for the text editor. And we can view our project view in sort of 2 different ways, really. We've got a traditional solution view, so you can see solutions and projects, just how they're defined in other editors. Or you can switch it and have a project view so that it looks like it does in Unity itself. And you can see here as well, we've got some annotations along with the project view which tell you which project those folders are used in. So for example, down here, the scripts folder, it's got some editor folders in there, and we can see that those are being used as part of the editor project. And the post-processing folder here has got an assembly definition file in there, so we will flag that up and say this is part of the post-processing assembly. So Shift brings up our search everywhere. We can very quickly navigate around. Again, we can just use things like the initial letters of some text there and very quickly navigate to types, to files, to symbols. And we do that, and we display the code, and we can immediately see that we've got an inspection going on here as well. So we've underlined something here. So there's something which the engine has found already and can fix up for you. If we hover over that, it'll tell us that we've got some virtual members in here, but nobody's inheriting from us. So there's no need to have virtual members here. So we can very quickly do Alt-Enter, and we can see there's a bunch of things we can do here. The first thing is a quick fix, and it says, well, let's make the class sealed. Let's get rid of these virtual methods. And there we go. And it just rewrites the code and gets you sorted there straight away. Now, part of the whole thing with the integrated environment is that we've got things like version control in there as well, so we can then see that we've immediately got a change in our code, and we can immediately see the differences and see how things are and check things in. And even then, while we're doing our code review and seeing what our changes are, we can see that we've got inspections here, so we can see something is saying we can use a C#6 style syntax. And again, Alt-Enter will allow us to quickly fix it up, even while we're kind of reviewing our code and working with it. OK, once we've kind of got a file open we can see, start to see now some of the things which Rider can do for Unity. We will highlight Unity classes and fields and methods in the editor here. So if you look in the gutter on the side here, we've got a little icon, Unity icon there to show that we are a Unity scripting component. And we've got a little tooltip to show us that as well. We've got the start method down here. And again, that is highlighted as well to say that it is a Unity event function. And if you highlight over the icon, or in fact just the method itself, you're going to get some documentation there to show you what that method will do. We also do the same for fields. So if I create a new field, we will then immediately highlight that and say that this is a serialized field. So we know that this is being used by Unity. But more than that, we know that it's actually being initialized by Unity. So we know that somebody's setting a value on it. And if we highlight over the cursor here as well, we can see that Rider is telling us that the value is being assigned, but nobody's using it. So we've actually got redundant code here. So we can do a couple of things here. We can, again, do our Alt-Enter and remove a field which is being accessed. But immediately we're being told something useful. We're being told that we've got redundant code and we can get rid of it. But there are other things we can do here as well. We can say, well, actually, I didn't want it to be serialized, and very quickly change it to be a non-serialized field. Or I can swap it back again as well and make it a serialized field. And while we're working with these kinds of things, we can do something like very quickly hide it in the inspector. Or remove that if we don't want to do that. And indeed, if we have it as private as well, we'll understand that we can easily make it serialized field by adding the attribute. And let me just get rid of that. Another nice thing we can do is with our refactorings. And I'll just show you there. So if we go down to our refactor this item in the Alt-Enter menu, then we get our control menu of our context menu of refactorings. And there's a bunch of things we can do here, simplest one of which is renaming. And so we can give it a new name, so we can change it to something different. I don't know, speed. And, oh, it's not a serialized field. Let's just make that back into a serialized field. And if we rename that again, length. We will rename it as a serialized field, but because we know it's serialized, we will also add the formally serialized attribute. So we will be able to tell the serializer that if it can't find a field called length, look for it as speed. And so we can actually try and help you keep your code clean, keep your code useful, and also keep it working, which is also a good thing. So another useful thing we can do, actually, let's stay here. Other useful things we can do is sort of code completion. And one of the things we do with code completion, the idea is just to be, you just type and we'll figure it out. We'll figure out the rest of it there. So if I wanted to create a new field here with a specific type, I just start typing, and it'll complete it for me. And you'll notice that there are items here which have got brackets and say in core.health. And you can see that right now at the top of the file there are no using statements which bring in core.health. But Rider will find it, you complete it, and it adds the using statement for you. So it's just nice and easy. The idea is you just type, we'll figure out the rest for you. And of course, this works for event functions as well. Just start typing, we'll complete those, and we'll recognize those, give you the documentation for it, and complete and build those. Again, in the Alt-Enter menu, we've got our Generate Code menu. And we can work with that, and we can generate a whole bunch of things from here. There's a whole bunch of interesting C# things we can generate, constructors, properties, equality members. We've also got this idea of generating Unity functions. And there it is. We also just showed the description of what it is that's being built there as well. So as you scroll through, you can see what the summary item of that particular method is. And you can select a bunch of them all at once, and you can generate a whole load of things. Presumably, you'll do it a little bit more subtly than just everything. And we've got inspections as well, which are Unity-specific. So for example, here we've got an event function now which has no function body, and now we've got a redundant method. And we want to get rid of that because there's going to be a performance impact. Unity's still going to call this method. But that's a bit of a performance impact. It's not doing anything. We want to sort of get rid of that. So again, we can do Alt-Enter and very quickly and easily remove our redundant functions. And on top of that, if we have something like a method which you've typed in yourself, if you haven't used code completion and you've got the method parameters incorrect, or you've added an extra static method, for example, you don't have to remember all of these things. Rider will help you do that for you. So we've got another inspection now, which is going to tell us that we've got the incorrect method signature. It shouldn't have static, and it should have a float array and an integer array, and we can now very quickly rewrite that and fix your code up for you. So you don't have to look these up in the documentation all the time. But of course you can if you want to. We can just click the link on the documentation, and we'll go and search that, and we'll go and find it, and we'll pull it from your local files if you've got it installed, or we'll go off and search Unity's website for you and show you what you've got. Okay, let's just delete that. Other useful features in the Alt-Enter menu that we have is, as I say, we've got these extra items down here: generate, inspect, refactor. We've had a look at some of the refactors. There are much more refactorings we have available, some more complex refactorings. But there's also some very useful navigation items here as well. So while you can jump straight to a particular class, and that's very quick at getting you to a class in itself, you can also navigate around your code once you've got there. So for example, here I can see what my base symbols are for targetable, so I can see what classes it derives from. And I can navigate to those, so I can navigate straight to damageable behavior. I can do a similar thing in the other direction and see derived symbols, and it'll show me then all of the derived symbols of this particular class, and I can very quickly navigate to those as well. We also show classes which are defined in Unity Engine code there, so monobehavior, behavior, component, and object. And you can navigate to those as well. And so we can navigate to component and object, and we will decompile that code and show you what it's doing on the fly. So this is very useful then for sort of inspecting what happens when you call a particular method or a property and access this kind of information. Okay. A couple more inspections then that are very useful, which show you then how much we understand about Unity and how we try and stop you having to switch backwards and forwards between the Unity editor and the code editor. For example, here is comparing tag against a string literal. This is inefficient. Tag is going to allocate memory for you. You don't want to be able to do that. There's a quick fix. There's an easy way of working with that. You can use compare tag instead. And again, Alt-Enter can fix things up and call compare tag for us. And if we've got not equals to there, we can again convert it to compare tag, and Rider will be smart enough to make sure that we've got that working in the same way. And again, we're flagging up a redundant method there of update. You definitely don't want any update methods to be called when they're not doing anything. So this kind of thing then is also trying to help you with best practice. We're trying to pull in some of the useful things you should be doing as part of everyday Unity development and making it obvious, making it front and center on the editor itself. And we also want to do things like warn you about things which only happen at runtime. So for example, creating a new instance of a monobehavior or creating a new instance of a scriptable object. That doesn't work. But it's only until runtime will you find that. So you'd switch back to Unity, it would recompile, you'd start your game, you get through a certain point, and then you get a warning saying, nope, you can't do that. We want to try and save you that time and show you this thing up front. And so we get an inspection here telling you can't call new on a monobehavior, you have to use add component instead. And we'll help you fix that up. And we'll even then check to see which game object you want to call add component on. We'll do a similar thing with scriptable object there and turn that into a create instance method. A similar issue here then is when you've got things like invoke repeating, start coroutine, where you're using string literals. These string literals, they're not checked by anybody. It'll compile, it'll get through, but it's only when you try and call it do things go wrong. And again, you're going to waste time doing that, whereas we can help you with this. So if we have something in here which is just wrong, then we'll highlight it. We say we can't find it, so it's no good. But we can also do better than that, and we can give you code completion. So we can give code completion within the string literal. Oops. And you can see all the methods that are available to you there. Once we've got that, we can also navigate directly to the declaration of the method at the bottom of the screen there. And from there as well, we can also do find usages. Find usages is a really useful navigation tool which we've got, which will work on symbols. We can also get it to work on string literals as well. You can find the usages of method inside a string. And we can rename this as well. And if we rename this, we'll see that it's being used now in the string literal itself. So we've fixed it all up there. So again, it's about trying to prevent issues before they happen at runtime. Similar kind of thing with some of the attributes you get. A nice problem which is going to happen is when you put serialized field on a property, it's going to be one of those things which you're going to search all day for, and you find it and you kick yourself. We'll show it as a redundant attribute there, and very quickly allow you to fix that up there. So we're going to sort of flag these things before you hit them as a problem. And then some of the things are just cool, really. So we highlight colors. If we can zoom in a bit on that, we can see that the colors are highlighted in the editor. And if we do Alt-Enter there, we get a color picker. And we can actually then very quickly choose a color, and it'll rewrite it, and it'll update your code for you. We can also then pick it from a palette, use the palette picker, and then sort of easily pick something then from your game, for example. So it's great for prototyping, getting your colors set straight away. We have a sort of similar feature then inside shader files as well. So we've got a color defined here. And again, we can highlight the color there, or we can pick it, and we can choose a different color, and it'll update the code and show what we've got going on there. We have syntax highlighting. We have some simple code completion of items. And also, excuse me, some syntax error highlighting. So if I just put some rubbish there, we've got a syntax error shown for us. Excuse me, and it is highlighted directly in the code. We can also do things like highlight where you're using a property as a variable there, and where it's being used. In the variable usages, we can do code completion, and again, find usages will show us that it's being used inside our shader file. Another nice little feature here are things like to-do comments. So we've got a comment here that says just to-do, fix these colors. They're clearly all wrong. And then in our To-Do Explorer, we can see we've got the comment just here, and it'll allow us to navigate around and find these things. And we can quickly keep a list of the things we need to do and fix. And interestingly, this integrates with the version control. So when you try and commit a file that has a to-do comment in, which you've just added a to-do comment in, Rider will flag this and say, you've just left a comment here to say to do. Are you sure you want to commit, or do you want to just review this first, and allow you to make sure you've got your code fully finished before you commit. All right, let's have a look at some debugging. Obviously, we want to be able to debug our code as well. Rider will sort of automatically configure everything for you. So we get this item at the top here, this drop-down item, which will automatically configure itself to set up you to attach to the Unity editor. I'm actually using a sort of pre-release version right now, so there's a couple of features which I'm showing which are in the next version, one of which is the attach and play. So currently you can attach to the editor and start debugging, and that'll just attach to the code itself. But we can do some more fun things as well. So I told you we dropped a plugin into your project. And that allows us to communicate with Unity and do some useful things. We can get information from Unity, and we can tell Unity to do things. So we have a little control bar at the top of the screen here, which will allow us to switch into play mode. And if I click that now, Unity will just recompile because I've been editing code. And at any second now, it will switch into play mode and just work, hopefully, any time now. Talk amongst yourselves while this happens. There we go. And it's still compiling. But yeah, so we can control play mode from within the editor itself. So you can, again, just hit play, and it'll start playing for you. You can do pause, you can do step, and we can work with it like that as well. We can also refresh your code in Unity from the editor. So while you are typing, and while you are, when you save your code, we can automatically, in the background, tell Unity to compile. So your code is kept up to date a lot more frequently. We can do this automatically. Or if you're the kind of person who hits Control-Save frequently and impatiently, then we can disable that, and you can just do it manually as well. OK, so debugging. let's just start a level. And if we start a wave, nope, it's not a wave. I want to actually, that's it, show one of these towers here. So, of course, we've got everything that you'd expect in a debugger. We will pause at breakpoints, and we will show the items down here in the variables window, and you can inspect those values, you can set those values. And we'll also show the values on the editor itself. So you can see by the declaration of the show method there, we're showing the value of the tower to show. And we can step through it, and we can work with our code as usual. We can also look at call stacks. We can go up and down the call stack. What's interesting is that we can go down the call stack into Unity Engine code. So we can actually debug third-party code, not just Unity Engine's code, but other code as well. So as long as it's a .NET code, we can decompile it on the fly, show you what that code is, and then put breakpoints in there. So let's go to, let's see this one, and let's put a breakpoint in there. And if I resume, now we've got a breakpoint inside Unity Engine code, and we can then sort of step into that, and we can carry on working with that. So this is very good for trying to figure out why some interaction with some third-party code isn't working. You can follow it through, step through it, even when the code isn't yours. The other useful thing we can do with the plugin is pull information from Unity itself. So what I've got here is while these, every time an enemy is spawned here, we're writing a log entry. And that's great. It's useful to get log information. But when you're in Unity itself, you just get a block of text down the bottom here, and there's not much you can do with it. It's a call stack, so it's code, and it should be related to code, but you can't do anything useful with it. You have to copy it, paste it, or manually go and find out where to use it. Well, we bring the log editor into Rider, and so we show the log window into Rider, and we'll show all of these log entries for you. And we'll update that as they're running. And we'll also parse the output and look for stack trace information there. And we can now sort of click around this and navigate around your code based on the paths that we've got available to us. And we can even click on the method name and take us directly to a method, or a class as well, and take us directly to a class. And so it's very useful. It's kind of trying to bring in the information that you as a coder need with your scripts, where you're actually working with your scripts. Okay, let's just switch out of play mode. Okay. So that's pretty much all I've got time to show you. There's a whole bunch of Unity-specific features which we've been through. The one thing which I haven't shown you, which I'd like to, love to if I had a little bit more time, is the test runner. We can actually run unit tests as well. So we're all doing unit tests, right? Yeah, well done. Unit tests for Unity can only run in the Unity editor instance. And so what we do with our plugin is we tell the editor instance to run the tests, and we'll report them in Rider. And again, you're going to get the call stack. You're going to get a clickable call stack when it fails, and allow you to navigate around your code. The other really useful thing to point out from this list of features is silent project reload. So whenever you add a new file into Unity and the projects get updated, Rider will just quietly and quickly update. So it's no bother. You just sort of seamlessly work with the two different environments. And if you add a file in Rider from a file template, that will appear in Unity. If you add a file in Unity, it'll appear in Rider. It's just nice and easy. But that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. We're built on top of ReSharper. ReSharper's got about 14 years worth of code going on in there. So Rider gets to use well over 2,000 inspections. We've got a whole load of context actions and a load of interesting complex refactorings as well. And so I don't have any time to show you those. A bunch of more features which are there, useful kinds of things that are in here, conditional breakpoints, so you can have more complicated sort of debugging scenarios. We've got the version control and the diff view. Local history is a very cool feature which creates snapshots of your code as you're working. It's going to save your work as you go along, in between checking into source control. And of course, we've got over 1,000 plugins available for it, and more importantly, there is a dark theme, so you'll be okay. Okay, so how do you get a version of this, copy of this? You can go to jetbrains.com/unity. You can download a 30-day trial version. If you are a student, you can get it completely for free. If you've just graduated, we do a student graduate discount. And if you're a startup as well, we give a 50% discount for startups. On top of that as well, the Unity support for Rider is open source. It's available on GitHub. Rider itself is not open source, but the Unity support is. It started life as a ReSharper plugin under the ReSharper Unity repository there. If you have any issues, if you have any feature requests, if you have any questions, you can always create an issue there. Which all leads me basically to say thank you very much for your attention. If you we don't have time for questions right now, unfortunately, but if you do have any questions, feel free to come up and see me afterwards, or we're at the booth downstairs in the expo hall, so feel free to come along and we can show you more information, answer any questions you have, or talk to you some more. But those are the links to go and download it, and thank you for your time.